What's going on, fishy friends? Sorry about that momentary technical delay.
It happens. We're live.
Yeah, it is the Crazyhorse Fishing Hour.
Mm-hmm.
How are you tonight, Lady C?
I am excited and nervous all at the same time. I'm just a big ball of energy because I'm really excited about who we have on tonight.
Sweet. Well, we are pleased to have
yes,
Jim Johnston, a.k.a. the Triple Threat Vet. He's from the Virginia region tonight. We don't do a whole lot of freshwater content, but
no.
I don't know why. I mean, that's where I learned to fish.
This is where I push it. You got it. Yeah. Kayakers, freshwater. Yes, please.
You were fortunate enough to get to cut your teeth on saltwater, but I grew up fishing ponds for largemouth bass, just like we're going to be talking tonight. So it's kind of a return to my roots a little bit.
Right. We have announcements tonight?
We do have announcements upcoming for the Fishing Channel on this show. Mm-hmm. We have Bob Pino with Hook Optics. Mm-hmm. We're going to really dive into that and a lot of awesome stuff with him. Brian Dolph with Old School Tackle Company is going to be coming on. Mm-hmm. And then we've been just sort of referring to it as a guy in the fish finder industry. That's how we've been referring to it. But I think we're to the point now we can say it's Kevin Conroy that is a representative with Humminbird who's going to come on, and we're going to dive deep into technology, really, into primarily like fish finders and how to read fish finders, side imaging, down imaging, all of that. Mm-hmm. But we'll get into basically everything that they got going on.
Where are we going to be in February?
We are. Why don't you take that one?
Oh, it's all you, sir. I got the next.
Well, okay. We're going to be at the Pasadena Fishing Expo on February 18th and 19th. So come check us out there. We're really excited about meeting everyone there, and
especially Rodney. Rodney, you got to come visit us.
Get in the car, start driving now, because coming from Independence, Missouri, it's going to take you a long time to get here. And then, real quick. I have one of the shirts on now. This is our Redfish shirt. We also have a Rock the Bay shirt.
Love it.
Those are available where?
Oh, at thefishingchannel.net. And actually, when you log into our Facebook and our Instagram, it actually brings it up for you. So you can shop from Facebook or Instagram, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Those extra clicks, I know those are hard.
Try to make it easy for everybody.
And we also have TFC Plus content. We're still building that database. I think we're up over 20 videos now of additional content, stuff that is from all of our collaborators and correspondents here on the Fishing Channel. But it's additional information that will make you a better fisherman. It's $5 a month, and it's a great low cost point to support all of this fantastic content that you like. Yep. I was on our channel the other day on YouTube, and we're on Facebook and Twitch and Twitter now. But I'd noticed we have over 300 videos of fishing content. Yeah, over 300 videos. Mm-hmm. So if you want to support this, if you love fishing content, if we do a good job of talking about fishing content in your area or relevant information to you, check out TFC Plus. You go on a computer or an Android phone and click the join button. Again, that's $5 a month. Mm-hmm. But we are pleased to have Jim Johnston, a.k.a. Triple Threat.
Yes. Oh, hey.
Hey, good evening, everyone. How you guys doing?
Good. So for everyone who's tuning in, and I say this all the time because I really admire all the people who are on our show. Shame on you if you don't know Triple Threat Vet. So there's a couple of things that I would like to say to introduce you, because there's just so much to say about you. It can fill an entire show. So for those of you who don't know Jim, I actually been following Jim since even before I started fishing and doing the fishing channel. So it's just a real honor to have you on. So Jim is a Army combat veteran. Thank you for your service. And love having veterans on the show. Jim is also a digital fishing content creator. He has his own YouTube, and he's co-founder of Warhawks, the Washington chapter. I checked it out. Some really great content is already on there. So definitely check that out. And we'll put a link to that at some point during the show so everyone can subscribe. So Jim has a tremendous heart for helping fellow veterans. He works in many organizations as a volunteer and an advocate to help veterans find their purpose in lives, heal, and just enjoy life again. This is so important. One area that Jim is really passionate in is helping veterans who struggle with PTSD. And this is what got me on one of the organizations that you shared with me that you volunteer and you support, which I'm not going to name right now. I'll leave you to that. But one statistic on the sites really hit me. It said, did you know that every day 22 veterans lose their battle with PTSD and other traumas and succumb to suicide, unfortunately? These are powerful statistics, and I think the statistics speak for themselves and to the importance of the work that needs to be done in these areas that Jim does. So Jim has also been featured on Fishing Kayak League website, and I love what was said about you. It was really good. There were two things that hit me, and one of them was you were noted for having innovative ways of taking fishing to the next level. And I thought of one video of yours on your Instagram page where you kind of makeshifted a swim bait to work better. I thought that was really cool. And also being a dedicated husband and family man. And you have, your dogs and you love them too. And just, a really strong voice for veterans. So that was really something that stood out to me about you. And also some interesting fact about Jim is that he has a knack for culinary cuisine and knows how to cook up a mean Asian version of snakehead. And I'm sure that tastes really good.
I try. Although recently, though, I've lost my sense of smell and taste because I had the flu just before COVID broke out. And my wife, she says, I'll take over the cooking. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that's a sign.
So, yeah, I'm really excited for this. And so nice to have you on the show, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I really am. Thank you so much.
Thought you were going to talk, and it turns out we were just going to say awesome stuff about
By all means, I'll just sit back and let you take the wheel. Not a problem at all. Thank you so much for having me here. And absolutely, represent the Washington Warhawks underneath the KFL umbrella. It's absolutely my honor, 100%. So thank you.
Right on.
That's a tough sounding name for a kayak angler. It sounds like you guys are fishing with like spikes and stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you right now, we have some hammers on the team. So I co-own it, and the original founder is actually Greg Nozar. So he is the founder and commissioner of the Kayak Fishing League. It's a great way to be able to bring more or less the esprit de corps for anyone who wants to be able to find that camaraderie when it comes to fishing. So if you've ever served in the military, if you've ever been part of a sports team or any kind of team like that, wherever you have someone that you have to rely on or they have to rely on you, and that reciprocity is there, it's a great way to be able to find that again. And I think that's why it's taken such a strong hold, especially in the bass fishing community. That has a huge population of veterans and active duty members, ours included. So our team included, absolutely. So my co-owner is William Brewer. I have to make sure I give a shout out to him too, because I'm only part of the equation, a very small part of the equation, but we as a team are a whole, absolutely.
Awesome.
That's good stuff. We talked to you a little bit about this during the pre-show. But as is tradition for now, all of our fishing reports and the Crazyhorse Fishing Hour, we do a question of the night that our guest chooses. So it takes all the possibility of favoritism away from Lady C and I. But it's for question of the night. And the question of the night that Jim will choose gets a prize.
That's
and
right.
I believe you have a prize that you have contributed to the cause.
I have, and I do have a price. That's correct. So one of my favorite types of swim baits are actually just some of the tackle that we have available to us in the basking community. I mean, there's plenty out there. You've got some big names. Me personally, I'm not sponsored. I'm not part of the pro staff, although I want to be, and I have submitted an application for it because I love their products. Sixth Sense has this monthly bundle that you can subscribe to. It's pretty intricate as far as getting in there and figuring out what you can do with the stuff they send you. But just as an example, they'll send you crankbaits, and they'll send you swim baits. They'll send you jigs, finesse jigs, all kinds of things. So this is a bundle. This is something I think would be good for anyone who wants to start off fishing, or if they are really in the middle of their career. If they're an expert angler, I think they'll be able to appreciate this. So yes, pretty good value.
Yeah. Can someone get on those big largemouth bass that you pull in with those lures?
Yes, I can. And I am very humbled by my colleagues because let me tell you, they definitely pull in some big bass. There was a tournament that was down in Florida this last weekend, and a good friend of mine, Rob, he pulled in. I think he pulled in. I want to say it was a 7 or 8 pounder, or he brought in a rather large one. But and then there's other ones too, other guys that are just hammers that were down there pulling big ones. So yeah, I'm definitely humbled by them. Trust me, they're the experts.
I'm super excited about talking about largemouth bass. It's funny. Lady C and I did some largemouth bass fishing on our 40-day excursion up and down the East Coast. And it was crazy. It was really the first time I'd really dedicated real time to largemouth bass fishing in, like, you're not going to believe this, Jim, in like 20 years. I've been a saltwater angler that long. And the last time I really fished hard for largemouth was we were using Texas rigs with like plastic worms, and I was just blown away by I don't even know if I want to say advances in lure technology, because it seems like it got even simpler. Like a Ned rig is literally like a stick of plastic.
Love it.
And
that's all it is.
On a metal jig, and it's like you look at it and you're like, how does that work? How on God's earth does that work? And it completely slays largemouth bass.
It does. It really does, especially when it's a tough bite. And even especially with COVID, you see a huge population, or actually an explosion of anglers who have now taken to bass fishing, especially within Virginia. It brought a lot, myself included. And because of my youth, I rediscovered the passion that I forgot was there. And that's really what brought me back into bass fishing, especially kayak bass fishing. And like you're talking about, you're throwing around some of the vernacular Ned rigs, and you get into finesse fishing with that kind of style. Then you get into some of the more intricate style, umbrella rigs, A-rigs, or Alabama rigs, big swim baits, jerk baits. Sometimes very, very simplistic. Other times very, very intricate. So everything from, I have examples I can show you too, but a lot of money that goes into each one of these lures, all the way down just to a couple. But remember, everything's artificial. We don't use live bait, and everything is catch and release. It's all about conservation and making sure that we embrace rather than exploit.
Right on. Hey, Jim, before we get into our questions for you, there's a question I'd like to bring up really quick.
Yes, please.
So MR Johnston says, where can you find Jim? Instagram, Facebook, YouTube?
You can find him on the fishing channel. He's right there.
Find him on the fishing channel. That's right. You beat me by a second. It's at Triple Threat Vet, and that's on Instagram. On Facebook, it's more of a closed option on Facebook. I would have to search for you, only just because I've taken more of a liking for Instagram and also for YouTube. Yeah. YouTube is it's going to be our Warhawks bass fishing, and if it's hard to find, only because we do most of our live tournaments that are I'm off a StreamYard, and they get sent right to our YouTube. It's Warhawks Bass Fishing 7053, if I believe. And then of course we have our Warhawks Bass Fishing on Facebook, which is open to the public. It's open source. So, but yeah, Triple Threat Vet, and then by all means, please add me, and I'll plug you into the community that we love and know.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a lot of questions already pouring in, but
let's get to the first question.
We're gonna talk about we're gonna ask our questions. We're rarely selfish.
Well, this is an important one.
And we always do prioritize our audience's questions, but I want to get it off on the right foot. Yeah. And we're gonna talk about bass fishing.
Really?
We are.
Favorite subject.
But before we get to that, let's just give people a little bit of background on who you are, particularly about your fishing story, how you got into fishing, how you became the war hawk of a kayak angler that you are now.
Yeah, right on.
I'm humbled, sir. Thank you. I got into bass fishing. Basically, when I was a kid, I started fishing very, very young. I grew up in the cornfields of Iowa. Shout out to Carol. One of the biggest advantages that I had growing up is that I was in the country and I had access to very, very small lakes, which I could get to pretty easily, ponds, and of course some of the different rivers around us. And so they were all within just a stone's throw away from where I lived. And so this really took hold of me when I was young because I just loved being outdoors. That was lost after I joined the military and eventually refound again just before COVID. And where my wife and I lived on the tidal base in the Potomac in Woodbridge, we lived literally right in Belmont Bay. And it was, you could walk out, see the water first thing in the morning. It was absolutely beautiful. And we had a neighbor who was very generous. And I just can't tell you how much time I spent on his dock. He had a private dock and he had it's right next to someone who's a VIP from DC, I'll just say that. And we had a lot of conversations out there. But it started with me getting back into catfishing, which is something I did a lot in my youth. And this is where my name really comes from. The Triple Threat Vet on Instagram is really where this comes from. And then, of course, I always had in the back of my mind I had to get back into bass fishing. And so I started and I did a little research. And once I got back out there, it grew exponentially very quickly, and it just took off. And that's when I found a good friend of mine, Will Brewer, the co-owner of the Washington Warhawks, and he helped plug me into the community. And this is ultimately where I met you guys. So yes, it's been a very, very blessed journey. And let me just say, I want to say thank you to my beautiful wife for supporting me through all this, because I wouldn't have the happiness that I have without her. She is absolutely my rock.
That is awesome.
Is she an angler?
She wants to deny the fact that she's an angler, but how can you not find
she's a closet angler?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she doesn't want to admit it, but I've seen her face light up when she's reeled in some pretty big catfish. Although she's never caught a bass, but hopefully that day will come soon.
That's beautiful.
Take a moment real quick to congratulate our sponsors, Robert and Christine Figliozzi. They were out yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, they were out yesterday with our good friend Cole Langley of Desperate Measures Guide Service. And I would say, I don't know if you would call Christine a closet angler, but you know, she's a conservative
angler.
Conservative angler.
Conservative. She does a lot. But this, you know, we want to focus on Jim.
No, but she caught a huge striped bass. And the only reason why I bring it up is that she was like, "This is my personal best." And I'm like, anybody who says personal best is not a closet angler.
Oh.
What's your PB, right? Yeah.
Right.
I was going with PB. Yeah.
I love that we took a moment to represent females in fishing. Thank you, gentlemen.
You absolutely need to. There needs to be. This is something that my wife and I definitely talk about, and I don't mean to go off on a thread here, but we definitely need to have more people in bass fishing, especially when it comes to conservation outreach. And let me tell you, women are, if anyone doesn't know this, let me just make sure I break the news to you. Women are smarter and stronger than men, by far. And so we need to have them so we can bring a lot more equilibrium when it comes to the sport of bass fishing.
Appreciate you.
Good stuff. The CCA tournaments that we have here on the Bay have been won by women the last, I think,
2 years.
2022 was a full sweep, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in the chat, but the light tackle ladies just crushed it.
Both years.
No kidding. Yeah. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, and there's a women's division, so they just basically win it all. Yeah. But bass fishing, you know, let's talk about bass fishing in Virginia in particular. We don't want to, you know, we don't want your honey holes. Well, we do, but we're not going to ask you. But you know,
that's closed. I apologize. I definitely give some information.
But just general bodies of water. I know you bass fish the Potomac a lot. But if someone wanted to get into bass fishing in Virginia, you know, what would be some general bodies of water that you could point them to?
Yeah, so that's actually a very easy answer to provide. But I'm going to start by saying I would definitely recommend doing research before you go anywhere. Research. Go to DWR's website, the Department of Wildlife Resources, and just take a look at their website and see what a wealth of information it is, because they're going to point you in the right direction as far as the open areas that people are allowed to go. And because this area is so close knit, and we've encroached onto our wildlife in all the different reserves that we have around us, a lot of areas are actually closed off. So where you think you may see a dock that you can go fish over here, you really can't. So to answer your question directly, start with the tidal basin, the Potomac. It has a lot of different areas. So for example, if you go to Occoquan Regional Park, or ORP as we know it in the bass community, they've got an open ramp. It's open to the public. You can go and launch from there, and you can start to make your way out and really start to expand your knowledge base from there. Talking with other anglers, getting firsthand information from people that are there, accounts, or eyewitness testimony, so to speak, like, yeah, I saw some guy, he caught a big bass over there. You know, these are the cool myths in that urban legend that starts is by getting out and interacting with people. Moving away from that area, start to look into some of the reservoirs, because in Virginia especially, there are no natural bodies of water as far as lakes are concerned. Actually two, but in general, there's usually just reservoirs, tidal basins, and rivers. That's all you have in Virginia. In the tidal basin, of course, the ebb and flow that we all know so well, as we see the water levels recede and then come back in, and now this is pretty much up and down the East Coast. And so this gives you a plethora of data points that you can start to use and plug in to find where bass are going to have hot spots and where maybe they won't. Learn how to fish the tidal basin, when the best time is. Is it when the tide is going out? Is it when the tide is coming in? Anyone who knows anything about the Potomac and fishing on it, you're going to know most people think it's a very deep body of water. It's not. It may be 3 foot average, maybe 4, if that. But it is. It's definitely eutrophic, very eutrophic, very nutrient rich. And so you have bass that get very fat and healthy, maybe not as long, but big and very healthy bass. And so it definitely helps contribute to a good environment for them. So I hope that answers your question directly.
Yeah.
Sure. So what's a big bass in the Potomac? I grew up in Georgia, as I mentioned, and you know we grow them big down there.
Yeah, you do.
I believe the world record is still a Georgia bass. We lost Jim for a moment. Let's see.
He's still connected, just no visual. Give him a minute here.
There
Okay,
he is. So
I think I lost you for a second. I had a phone call from my co-angler. I apologize.
No worries. No worries. He's like, you look great, dude. You're doing awesome.
Support.
Yeah, right.
No, but so you know, on the Potomac, what's a big bass?
So in the Potomac, I have a good friend of mine, Greg Nozar, the founder and commissioner of the KFL. I think he caught an 8-pound bass out there, and it was roughly 20 inches, 21 inches, if I'm not mistaken. And forgive me if I'm misquoting Greg. And that was a really big bass in terms of weight. Now, in the kayak world, we use measurements. And so we use measurements on a catch board, which I happen to bring mine down here just in case you wanted to see it. But when we do our tournaments, we have to measure them. And it's got to be, a standard across the board. There has to be a baseline weigh. And when you talk about the Potomac, a good bass is anywhere between, I would say, or what they call an M, is 20 inches and above. So a citation in the state of Virginia, which is a citation bass, is an award bass, an award-winning bass. That's 22 inches. So you get a 22-inch bass anywhere in Virginia, the state has identified that is a very good length to go with. The tidal Potomac right now has a lot of 20-inch bass, a lot of 19s, a lot of 21s. So if you're talking about length, that's the terms. If you're talking about weight, 5, 6. If you get up into the 7-8 pound range on the Potomac, you're talking very rare. They are there, but they're hard to catch. They're hard to find.
Hey, 7 or 8 pound bass. I don't care where you are. That's a big fish.
Oh yeah, it definitely is.
For sure.
It definitely
we
is.
have a picture.
Oh, pictures.
Maybe
I
you
love
can
this.
tell us about these fish. This looks like some pretty good sized.
Yes.
Largemouth. Looks like some solid.
Let me adjust my camera. I'm so sorry, guys.
4 to 6 pounders there.
Yeah, if you don't mind, if you can pull that back up real quick.
Sure.
I'm going to show you. So this actually plays into some of the outreach that I like to do or help promote. So this is a tournament that was just held. It was a winter tournament that happened a couple of weeks ago, and this was out on Lake Anna. So Lake Anna has a couple different strains of bass out there. You have spotted, you have, of course, your northern bass, which is your Microptera samoides, and then you have a new strain that has been introduced by the state, and this is, it started in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. 2020, it's a 6-year cycle. They're on the year 3. All right, or actually moving into year four because it's 2023 that we just moved into for the calendar year. And what that means is that they're taking the Florida strain and they're mixing it with a northern strain. So you have Microptera samoides, and they're converging that with Microptera samoides floridenza, which is the Florida strain. And the Florida strain grows exceedingly fast and very, very large. So as you pointed out before, you have big bass down in Georgia, where the world record has stood since 1932 at 22 pounds, 4 ounces. Florida bass, they're in Georgia bass, they get enormous because they're in a very hot climate, whereas we're in a temperate climate. And then when you take a look at these bass that you have up on the screen, the one that's real beautiful, the second from the right, this bass has this patching on it, this black patching. Right. So this is what's called the Adamavirus. And I think actually we have a video on our Washington Warhawk site that I made once when I caught one. The Adamavirus is contracted by the bass, and what biologists believe, they haven't concurred yet, and they haven't solidified this data, but what they believe is that when the largemouth bass or any bass species, black bass species, contracts the Adamavirus, it grows lesions. And the healing process is when you see the lesion start to turn black. And so you see this bass, the second one from the right, or anyone who's ever caught a largemouth bass and they've caught them in abundance where they see maybe black spots. It could be on the gill platelet. It could be on the fin, on the mouth, especially. You'll see black patching, and this is because the bass is in the healing process, they believe. So, but these are big bass. This is a 30-pound bag, which is insane. So that means that every one of these fish, at the very least, was 6 pounds, and this is in one tournament.
Wow,
that's great.
That's amazing.
I saw that one with
no weights.
I saw that. Yeah, nobody put any weights in the bellies. I saw the one with the blotchy spots, and I was like, it almost looks like it's bred with a peacock bass or something.
No.
Yeah, I know, right? I thought the same thing. Yeah, but it's definitely not.
Yeah. Well, let's get to some audience questions that we have coming in. John would like to declare himself the winner already.
Right on, John.
And he says that he has the question of the day.
Shout out to John.
Okay, we will take that into consideration, John, that you have declared yourself the winner. He says, what is your recommendation of an entry-level angling kayak? I mean, he called his shot, but it's a solid.
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about kayaks.
It is a good question. So let me tell you something about John. John knows how to fish, and he is probably one of the best bank line anglers I know. Good friend of mine too. So it would be cheating if I said, yeah, you won already. To answer your question, John, great question. I'm going to go with my roots, my Bonafide. So Bonafide makes the SS127. They also make the 10.7, which is 10 foot, and they've got a couple other variations as well. But the 127, which is 12 foot 7 inches long, it's very, very stable, has a good platform for pedals. And then you can also attach a trolling motor to the front, which is what we use. Or also you can use everything is all battery powered, but you can use a quicker like a Torpedo in the back or a Bixby in the back. So yeah, definitely I would recommend a Bonafide. There's a whole bunch of different variations out there, obviously, but I would recommend if you're going to pick, it's kind of like finding a motorcycle. You don't want to pick something that you're going to have to sell and then go up in size. Get the one that you want to ride, so you know it that much better, and you know it and you grow into it, so to speak. Not much better, but grow into it.
Yeah, on the Bonafide, I really like your answer on that. Up until recently, I know there's a newer Torpedo that was out, but the Bonafide, the guy that Jeff Little, who's sort of the Torpedo guy, said that the Bonafide was the fastest kayak with the Torpedo on the back. And I mean, there's a lot to be said nowadays.
It's pretty quick.
With all of the advancements in kayak motors, that that you should get a kayak motor and not pedals, because of everything, in terms of having that space in front of your deck and just to use the motor. But I don't know, interesting argument there.
Yeah. I would say it is an interesting argument, and I think if you're going to go with the pros and cons, because I know someone who has a pedal, and he's not a big fan of it when it comes to the Bonafide. But if you take Hobie and you look at their pedal drives, they're state of the art. I mean, they are top of the line. So it really depends on what is going to suit you well. Because of my height and because of my back issues that I have, pedal drives are not really something that I think I can go to. So I stick with the battery operated motor mounts. But again, it just depends on the angler. If you want one that you can pedal around and not have to worry about lugging all that lithium battery with you, by all means, it's definitely the way to go then.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Rodney Green, how you doing, Rodney? What are the 3 important things that you can't do without on a kayak?
That you can't do without?
Yes.
Right. The 3 things that you got to have with
like
you.
A good chair.
First and foremost, always a PFD, personal flotation device.
Yes.
Always safety first. And I got to say, the reason why should be apparent. It should be obvious. But it doesn't take but just a second for something very, tragic to happen, whether maybe you get lightheaded and you fall over. If it's wintertime, especially, recently at Smith Mountain Lake, there were 2 anglers that did perish, unfortunately, very young. They were in a kayak, but they were not wearing their PFDs. Second is going to be a paddle, regardless if you have a pedal drive or not, a paddle, because it's very helpful for not just getting away from the dock and pushing away from the dock, but if you have any equipment that does break out there, that paddle is going to get you back to land. And then 3 is going to be, I guess that's kind of a toss-up. Your lighting that you have. I'm going to stick with safety on this one because what I think is essential may not be essential for someone else. But lighting, you definitely get out early and you stay late sometimes, so you got to have your bow lighting on. So you're going to have your red and your green, and make sure that you're always able to be seen by other boaters because you're low in the water as opposed to being up high.
No, those are important answers for sure.
Good stuff, and great question, Rodney.
Good question. Very good question.
Let's dive back into bass fishing, because when I was talking about the advancements in lure and tackle and terminal tackle, I wasn't done yet, so I want to get back into that. But what is your favorite method to target bass?
Oh, that's easy. I'm a swim bait guy. Shout out to Piz Swim Baits. I'm a swim bait guy, and I'll give you an example of one, but I have many, and it depends on the time of year. It also depends on just the situation, but big baits catch big bass.
Nice. Yeah.
Big baits catch big bass. So big paddle tail swim bait, all the way down to a shaky head. Shaky head, I caught my last citation on. Love it. But swim baits are definitely my go-to. I can catch a swim bait. I can catch a bass on a swim bait pretty much, year round. It's 100% year round, but it just depends on the body of water, what I'm targeting, the depth, if the bass is suspended, if they're sitting on the bank line, because bass, they bifurcate twice a year. Some go deep, some go shallow. In the spring, when they come in and they spawn and they go back out, some will stay close to the bank line and some will go out in deeper water. And then of course they do the return and reverse in the fall. Bass are no different than people as far as personalities. Some are introverts, some like to hang around crowd. That's why you'll find your rogue bass along the bank line, and they're going to be right where you want them to be, right on that structure, right on that laydown, right on a brush pile, right off a point, right? And then you get into the deep side, and you get them in creek channels. You get them off, certain important underwater topography features that you want to look for. So that's how you target them. It just depends on what you're using. But yeah, swim baits for sure.
Yeah. I have a quick question. When you and I talked the other day, you mentioned the umbrella rig. You had a umbrella rig. Can you explain to the audience when you would do something like that?
I can. As a matter of fact, I can show you an example, not to give out juice, but I'll show you. So in a package, it looks like this. I don't know if you can see this very well. Let me turn it so that way.
Oh, it's good.
Okay. And this is a hog farmer. This is one of the top. Yeah, this is one of the top brands. It's one of the preferred ones that you'll see amongst anglers. It's one of my favorites. And then I'll pull this one out. I've got a whole big old setup here, and I don't mean to take too much time, but umbrella rig is also known as an A rig, Alabama rig. And basically, it's just a bunch of wires. Let me get it set up first. And you've got swim baits attached to it, and it's meant to mimic a school of bait fish. So this would be swimming sideways, and as you're pulling it through the water, as you're reeling it through the water, all these swim baits, they're swimming behind it, and they're kicking their paddle tails, so it looks like a group of schooling bait, and so it just drives those bass crazy. When you can swim it right by them, I mean, you're almost guaranteed to get hit. It's
I
got to
love
match
that though.
match the hatch, match the coloration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it takes a while to learn. It really does. And I'll tell you, one of the things I love about it is that because it does take that long to learn and to try to figure it out and hone it in, it's a challenge, just like with all bass fishing. But once you get it dialed in, it's a very rewarding process.
Yeah. I love that though, because this is the first time in conversations that we had with previous anglers where anyone has ever mentioned using an umbrella rig on a kayak fishing for largemouth bass. I love it. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
So unique.
You're so welcome.
Obviously, the umbrella rig is a huge thing in saltwater. People
Yes.
use much larger versions of that, and we've done it before. With my 7-year-old, because it's an easy way to put her on fish. You just basically troll around, and when the rod goes down, you put the rod in her hand, and she reels it in. But those rigs, put a lot of drag on the boat, and I can't imagine pulling those big umbrella rigs around in a kayak. At that size, do the umbrella rigs cause some drag? I mean, is it does it take a sturdier rod to cast and troll those?
It does, but we don't troll them. Well, you can. I don't know of anyone who trolls them. Only because bass fishing is much different in freshwater than it is for fishing other species out in saltwater. And I'll say the reason why is because I've fished saltwater. In fact, I was mahi fishing this summer down in North Carolina. So this is what I'll say about this. When you find the areas that you do want to fish with your A-rigs, you're pretty much going to be spot locked, and you're going to be confined to that area. So you're using forward-facing sonar, live scope, active target. These are the different types of target systems. And I think I heard you mention this briefly when you opened the dialogue. Yeah, we use those. I use those. It allows us to target from a distance away. Typically, I'll be within 60 to 70 feet away, but then, this is what we're swimming by, the structure where we know these bass are, or we can target them, especially on the shoreline. So we're not trolling behind us. We're not pulling behind us, but we're staging ourselves in areas and then approaching and fan casting our lures out there for sure.
I love that. Do you have a video? Because you're really great on your educational videos. Do you have a video to show how to use this setup?
I appreciate it. No, but we definitely, it's funny you say that. So Will and I have talked about making videos for these, so that way we can start posting them. It seems to be a good theme, especially amongst bass anglers. That way they can start to see it. If you follow Instagram or any kind of social media, and you see somebody who talks about how to rig something up differently, like say I take, say I take a swim bait, and I want to learn how to link it up with the right size hook, how I'm going to use a screw hook, how I'm going to rig it in there, especially what type of line I'm going to use. It definitely seems like the educational approach to this is something that we can target. But to answer your question directly, not yet, but soon, very soon. If you subscribe or you log on to Instagram, we can definitely do that. So.
Awesome. Yeah, just a reminder too, because I know that time can be moving us pretty fast here, but just a reminder, there is a prize for question of the evening. And can you show us, Jim, one more time what that awesome prize pack is?
I can. Yep, 6 cents. And so it's a goodie bag from them. It's got trailers in it. It's got crankbaits, lipless crankbait, and then I think it's got a finesse jig in there, if I'm not mistaken. So all good to go. It's about a $50 value. So
I see dead fishes.
What?
6 cents. The movie. That's going to be a meme. People are going to be like, "What was that guy talking about?"
I know, right? I know.
Actually, I have a question. So this is what I want to talk to you about before, when I was talking about how strange some of the changes in bass tackle has become. And the Ned rig is a very unusual, the little Yamagatus and the tiny weedless Ned rig jigs. But the other one that just blew me away, that happened in the time that I wasn't bass fishing, is the wacky rig. I mean, that is the weirdest dang
Oh
thing.
my God.
Like, why does that work? And
Let me tell you, they can't resist it. They can't. We were just at a fishing show. We were at the Fishing Expo in Richmond, and one of the pros was there, and then the gentleman that was there's those big tanks that they have with the bass in them. It's a 4,500-gallon water tank, and you see these big bass they have that they basically buy from a farm, and then they transfer them out there. They're usually about 2.5 to 3.5 pounds in size, but they put on a demonstration on how they're going to catch these bass or what they can use to catch these bass, right? It is very intriguing to see how they go about it and what definitely works. And he touched on the wacky rig. Now, anyone who does bass fishing knows a wacky rig, especially in the springtime, it works. It works. So Gary Yamamoto, the guy who invented the Cinco worm, which is just a stick bait, just regular stick worm, right? Like the General, I think is what it's called. Green pumpkin is that main color, and so green pumpkin not only emulates the color of a fish, but also it's going to emulate your type of crayfish. That it's going to be a main food source or sustenance for the bass, especially for largemouth. And so when you're casting it and it's on a hook, you're basically just taking that worm and you're sticking it through the body of the worm and you're casting it out. And as it floats down, it may have a little wobble to it, but just dead sticking it, letting it float to the bottom, it drives them crazy. And I can't even tell you how many bass we've caught that I've caught on a wacky rig.
So
it's
guys,
insane. Big ones hit it in Florida everywhere.
if you don't know what we're talking about, so you'd never see this. I've never seen anything like this in saltwater fishing before. But the plastic worm would be my index finger in this case, and then the hook would go right smack in the middle of it, not threaded on there like a Carolina or a Texas rig, or how you would do a jig head or a weedless setup. It's just like hooked through the middle, and for some reason that drives them nuts. I mean, that when I saw that, I was like, you know what, I've seen it all.
It does.
Sure.
Let's talk about your rig, how you fish, your rod and reel, and we can even talk about your kayak. So let's talk about
Love your
the
kayak.
way you like
no
to
problem.
fish, your kayak, your rods, your reels.
I have so many rod and reels. I would say, I don't know, we're just going to say I have a plethora of rod and reels. I have a ton that we use. And everyone asks, why do you need so many? You need so many because you have to adapt to the style of fishing.
Right.
Certain rods have certain strengths to them. Some are going to be more for your finesse fishing. Some are going to be for power fishing, for your big swim baits. You have to have that spine and that that rod to be able to cast way out there. If you had a flimsy one, you're not going to be able to cast very far. Obviously, it's not going to be able to support the weight. Also, when you go to set the hook, the length, and this is why when you watch any kind of bass videos, especially with pros, they're going to say, what I'm using here is a 7'2" medium heavy power action reel. They're going to get into all that lexicon that we use in the bass fishing industry. Because I have my setup the way I do, I use a Blue Sky. It's the Pro 360. It's a double pontoon with a nice deck on it. Just because I'm a bigger guy, I like to be able to swivel in my chair. What I use, I have at any given time, I have about 8 setups that I take with me. Maybe on a good day, I'll be able to use 6. It just depends. If on a bad day, I'll use that many. If I'm on a good day, I'll be dialed in and I'll have 1 or 2 that I'll have to stick to because I'll know what it is, right? The cadence and the rhythm of that day. But this is why we do a lot of outreach too, because we want to make sure that we try to bring a lot of people into the fold. And eventually we get to this portion of it when we can talk about some of these agencies and organizations that we love so much, That really is what we're trying to do, is be able to get people onto certain rigs that do help them, especially disabled veterans like myself, that help them to be able to find their place or find their calling. If it's bass fishing, so be it. We'd love that.
Right on. Do you have any other questions?
Does that answer your question?
No, you answered it really well.
That's a good segue into our next set of questions, though. Are you okay for me to go in, or do we have a question? Okay, good.
Go for it, yeah.
So, we talked about Warhawk, your YouTube. So can you tell us a little bit more about, the goals, the objectives? What are your plans and your vision for this YouTube?
No, absolutely. Thank you. So the Washington Warhawks, we fall up under the KFL, the Kayak Fishing League. We fall up under the umbrella of that. And if you try to compare it, it's very easy. If you look at the NFL and their paradigm, so, obviously, the National Football League, and you have all 32 teams underneath that. The Kayak Fishing League is kind of the same. It is the same, actually. In essence, we have tournaments against other teams, and we do this for the championship. We want bragging rights, but that's not the goal. The goal is to be able to basically enjoy our passions, to be able to bring people out, expose them to bass fishing in a positive way, and also be able to conduct community outreach. That way we can bring what is important, and that includes our fresh waters. That includes all the different flora and fauna that you find on the fresh waters. But more importantly, we're able to be able to reach out to our veterans, our first responders, who include law enforcement, fire. In fact, one of our anglers on the Washington Warhawks is a fireman, and God bless him, Mike Hogan, shout out. But let me tell you, the biggest thing is be able to give back, and I know that sounds cliche, but we mean it. We don't play around with this. This is something that we take very seriously. We do it with the drive and passion and motivation that anyone who loves something is very passionate about, that you see deep down. And so we don't spend this kind of money on nothing. We do it because we love it and we enjoy it. And that means that when we get out and travel, so we have teams all the way up and down the East Coast that push all the way into the Missouri Valley, down to Texas. So these are the different teams that we travel, and then all the way up into Michigan, into Lake St. Clair. We travel these distances because we love and enjoy be able to get out, bass fish, and do it together. Be able to help promote esprit de corps and education.
Right on. That was beautiful. Thank you. Well, let's go deeper now, because we're getting in the realm of volunteering and advocating for veterans, which if you watch this show, you know how passionate I am about supporting these things. Children, giving back to veterans for sure. We've had Heroes on the Water on the show, and we volunteer. Just really important work. But there's other important work that you do that's equally related to reach out, not just for veterans, but their families, which I think is so important. I mean, we played a video with Heroes on the Water from a guy and his testimony, and his family was in it, and his little children, and how they're impacted, and how Heroes on the Water really helped them through that. It was really powerful. So, you work with and advocate for and volunteer Mission 22, 22 in a day, which I kind of alluded to when I introduced you, and the Guardian Support Group. So you have the floor on this. Please share whatever you want to about these organizations.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start with Mission 22. Mission 22 is a nonprofit organization. They have a platinum rating on StarGuide, and one of the things that you have to love about them is that they basically recycle 80% of their profits back into their programs, and they are able to actually help the veterans that do suffer from PTSD, that do suffer from some type of ailment where they need assistance or help, where they need someone to just listen to them. So I'm getting goosebumps now. The number 22 comes from how many veterans commit suicide every day, or what's actually being reported. The number is actually higher than that. It's around 43. 43 veterans a day. That includes, the categories that they really don't talk about, which are kind of hush-hush, and that includes addiction, and also alcoholism, unfortunately. And the problem is that this is a self-perpetuating dragon. This is what really kind of forces and drags this into the way it is. And now in our society, a lot of times that there's a stigma that is associated with that, and that's just unfortunate, very unfortunate. So now we want to make sure that we bring awareness to this, and we do that through Mission 22. If you like certain shirts and styles of shirts too, and also like hats, for example, there's hats that I have worn out. These two hats were the same and identical in color and everything, right? But you see this one's a Mission 22 hat right here. And this one is so sun faded and water faded from being out in the weather so much. And by the way, this is a hat I got on their website, and it's the same as our Washington Warhawk hats. We get this merchandise from the Guardian Support Group. They're the ones that supply all the merchandise for Mission 22. They also supply, and I want to make sure I give a shout out to to Corey and Jeff. They're the founders, and they do everything because they're inspired to help people by doing outreach and also serving as an intermediary between buyer and supplier. Greatergood.org. Oh my God, I learned about them recently. My degree is in emergency management, so I'm fully aware of what disasters can do, what the impact is for any type of disaster. And we're talking about if anyone is displaced, we're talking about internally displaced people, displaced people, people who suffer, homeless veterans as well. They have packs that they basically help facilitate, and they don't take any kind of They don't take any kind of revenue from this. They basically just all they do is they request that the cost has been covered, and then basically all they do is they facilitate the transfer for all goods and merchandise that have to go from point A to point B. And if you go to thegreatergood.org and you take a look on their website, you'll see how many packs that they provided. That includes like the survival packs, the essential packs that have like, for example, veterans who are homeless with dogs or pets. They have their, there's like a dog leash, a dog whistle, there's treats in there like bacon strips and so on to help those that are in the recovery process. And also they help with translocation for any type of pets that have to go out of state because they're in an area that's been affected, say like a hurricane or a disaster from a tornado. This is something that I got to give the Guardian Support Group kudos for. And if you've never heard of them, please go Google them. They're probably one of the most altruistic agencies I've ever met. Or known. So,
well, John asked a question, and then guys, we're going to go back and answer everyone's question after this question, because we want to make sure all of your questions and thoughts are represented in the show.
For sure.
But John asked, is there anything we can do to also help in the charity organizations that you're a part of?
Good question.
outstanding. Yeah, John, absolutely. Last year we put on a fishing tournament to raise money and raise awareness for combating veteran suicide, and you can make donations directly to Mission 22. I personally know of a veteran. I know actually a couple of veterans that partake in their programs that they have, and they said that they're phenomenal. They actually, they really do help. And I'm going to encourage you to go to Mission 22 and go to their website and take a look at it. But yes, you can contribute to them directly. There's a couple other agencies and organizations out there. There's like the Purple Heart Foundation, and there's not only just Heroes on the Water, but that's more of a like a volunteer. It's all about volunteerism, but they're very difficult to sustain without donations. And so I definitely encourage you to do so. But make sure you do research to find out where that money goes back to as well. And this is ultimately why Mission 22 is our primary choice for this, to include Guardian Support Group. So
awesome,
guys. That's fantastic, and our audience was really great over the holidays with contributing money to the cause that we chose.
Oh yeah,
but
for sure.
We're not gonna, if you contribute money to these causes, that's great. I challenge every single person that's watching tonight to go out and volunteer a day of your time to any of these organizations that we've talked about tonight. Lady C and I have given some of our time to Heroes on the Water, and it's such a valuable thing. And we talked to Jim Cooper, who heads up the Maryland chapter of Heroes on the Water. And when we talked to him for over an hour one night, and he said over and over again, we need volunteers more than we need, cash cash money. And guys, that's huge. So take this challenge from me. Take a few minutes after the show, go onto a website and volunteer a day of your time.
Yeah, for sure. And as a military veteran myself, I've used a lot of services at different points in my life where I was really struggling, and personally I can share how important these things are. One website that was connected to some of these organizations that you mentioned was militaryveteranproject.org. And it connected to some of those programs that you mentioned and some others. So there's just so many, but I love the ones that you mentioned. I researched them. And again, when you talk about giving back and then adding things in there, like things for a pet, it's so important, because when you're a veteran who's struggling with these things, and we have a lot of them in our area, there's a lot of anglers that we know who are veterans and experience these things, but your pet is your family and your lifeline in many cases. So it's such a considerate thing to consider that, not just human beings, but pets. So that's pretty amazing that they do that.
Well, thank you all for waiting. We are going to get to all your questions tonight, but I thought it was a valuable thing to spend some time on. Our buddy E, who is also a military veteran, and we thank him for his service, says, how often do you use top water for bass? Do you like poppers, walking the dog, or something cool I have never heard of? E, you've heard of everything, dude. And he says, thank you for your service.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So topwater is actually a very unique style of fishing because it only really accounts for a very small percentage of bass that are really going to feed from topwater. But you can definitely start to do it with buzz baits. You can use top toads, poppers, walking the dog. Walking the dog is it's something that you're going to use for a very specific time of the year. And then as you start to move into the warmer months, you're going to have to really target the bass and specifically identify the areas that you think are going to be. So if you're asking the question, what did you use to catch that bass? That's the wrong question. The question should be, why is that bass not there? Or is that bass there? In other words, knowing the topography and where the layout is. And so when I started thinking along those lines, it changed my entire setup of what I was going to do to approach. And so, yes, poppers are phenomenal. They're wonderful. I've caught wonderful bass on them. Walking the dog, I know how to do it very well, and you're going to be doing it when you see a lot of blow-ups on the water, when you see it, especially for that spring spawn time, pre and spawn, and then as you move into the fall. Fall is going to be it's going to be a lot better for you because now you've got warmer temperatures and the water's already been at that peak temperature from the summer and it's starting to cool down. So those bass are going to be up more feeding on the shad, alewife, and so on. So yes, I hope that answers the question.
Great.
Good job.
Awesome. Thank you.
Lawrence, he's touched on your answer, but we're still going to put it up there. If you could fish only one bait year round, what would you go with?
Mm-hmm.
I thought we touched on it. I thought it was the big swim baits.
Yeah, year round. Yeah, I could. Here's the thing, right? Swim bait is definitely year round. If you're not in the swim bait category, because some people it just doesn't stick. I would say go to a T rig, go to a wacky rig, or excuse me, not shaky head. Excuse me, I said wacky rig. I didn't mean that. I meant shaky head. Yeah. So ground game or middle game. That's really what we're talking about.
This is good. Wow, this person has your last name. It's your brother.
That's my brother.
Says he must answer what? He must answer, how do you safely and properly launch a kayak into the water from a trailer with someone occupying said kayak?
I think there's a story behind that.
I love you, Matt. There is definitely a story behind this. And first and foremost, you should never do that. Safety first, right? Yeah, I'll call him after this. Yeah, you don't want to do that. And the reason why, obviously, kayaks are not meant to be launched like that. It's got to be safe and efficient. However, let's say you have a kayak and you have it's colder water or something, and you want to make sure that you launch it. If someone's going to be in there, as long as that trailer is fully submerged and you can gently roll it down onto a ramp, you're good to go. Just make sure that that individual doesn't flip over and roll over. So I think that's where the whole safety comes into it. But yes.
Yeah.
We're not going to get the story.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I'm going to contradict myself.
Okay, we got other questions.
I'll tell you after this if you want.
Well, John says, you setting him up for a good story, Matt?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Rodney. Okay, so Rodney Green asked, do you prefer to fish with rods under 7 foot from a kayak?
Oh no, it depends. So like a good jerkbait rod is going to be about 6'6", 6'8". Any other type of fishing, you're going to have well over 7 foot, 7'2", 7'4". Swimbait rods are much longer than that. I think my longest rod is probably 8'1" or 8'2". So, and I'm a tall guy, so like my rods, if I'm holding my arm out and I'm trying to fish, you just have to find a way to get around the extension that you have of your body. And so my kayak, because I do stand up on it, as most people do with their kayaks as well, except in the winter, you'll see that you can just start to adapt to that kind of profile of fishing. So, yeah.
We've only got a couple of more questions, and then we want to get to
your last question that has a matching video.
Yeah, your memorable moment, and to be able to offer to share that.
I love that.
But John asked,
oh yeah.
As a tournament angler, what is your advice for an angler that hasn't done one but is thinking of taking the plunge?
Good question.
It's a great question.
Definitely take a look online, find someone, or just ask in the community, look into the forums, who is already an angler when it comes to doing tournaments, and match up with them and talk to them, ask questions. There's nothing like first-hand advice from someone who is a veteran angler, especially tournament angler. You can try to piecemeal things together. You can go to, for example, you can go to the Kayak Fishing League website, and you can take a look on the website there and look at what the rules are, what we use for rules, how we implement them, because it's very, very, very specific on what it says you can and cannot do. For example, where the hand placement can be, what you're supposed to use for measuring a bass, your catch board, how the bass has to be positioned with the face up against the bumper, which eye, can you cover the eye, and so on. I mean, sorry, that was loud. A lot of information out there, but until you get firsthand knowledge from another angler and you do this with repetition, it really can be very difficult or, a very enduring task to be able to take on.
Yeah, for sure. Great advice.
Great question, though.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree.
If I may, can I use that as a quick segue into something, too?
Sure.
Something that we try to do when it comes to awareness with all bass fishing is making sure that we keep everything nice and healthy. We don't leave, for example, if you're out and you're fishing and you're always cutting line, you're retying knots, you're doing a lot of things. We don't ever leave trash around, but it's also about making sure that we know what the waterways are like and how and what we're fishing for. And so as a shout out to John Odenkirk, the snakehead whisperer, as I call him, we recently had him talking with our team, the Washington Warhawks, talking about some of the invasive species to include Alabama bass, and how Alabama bass have moved up into Virginia. So you have your typical spotted bass, you have largemouth bass, you have smallmouth bass, and then you have the subgroup of smallmouth bass, or spotted bass, which is your Alabama bass. And because they started to move up into our waterways, actually they were moved illegally, and let loose into our waterways, they've now, over the last 20 years, they've infiltrated and permeated all the different waters that we have. And what has happened, and what we know, is that Alabama bass now have moved in, and largemouth bass have started to move out. And that's because they're in what we call direct competition. They're feeding off that direct food source for largemouth bass and for spotted bass. And the problem is that we don't want that. We want to make sure that we keep largemouth bass. This is precisely why there are programs like the Tiger Bass program, like the Eflin program, and we want to make sure that people, English specifically, that are out on the water that are trying to catch bass, they know that this is a big, important issue, that we should not be translocating fish. We should not be trying to do this. We should not be taking fish from a different body of water and moving them up. Whether it was a pet and they just didn't like it, or they did it with malice, which I hope no one would do that, but it does happen, unfortunately. We spend millions of dollars every year in trying to stock our bodies of water with, healthy fish, and it's all being undermined by, these, other invasive species which are being brought in illegally, to include Alabama bass. So know what to look like, or excuse me, it's very hard, but know what to look for and know what you should do. So
right on. Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head on that one, for sure. And I definitely recommend everybody subscribe to the Warhawk Washington chapter YouTube and watch that video with John Odenkirk, for sure.
Yes, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
I
actually have the slides too, so we can always.
Yes. So we have another question.
Just reach out to me.
We are caught up.
Oh, we're caught up on questions. Does that mean we can go to our fun last question?
We can do it.
All right.
Yep, we're there.
So what's the craziest thing or most memorable story that you've had so far in your fishing experience?
Okay, so I have three that stick up, but only one that I can really tell you. But yes, this one, it's more comical than anything. So shout out to Corey Dreyer. We were fishing against the Carolina Casters, and Corey Dreyer is an absolute hammer. He very, very, very good angler. Anyway, we were competing against them on the Occoquan Reservoir. And if you know Fountainhead, this is where we launched from. And also, like you can go to Bull Run. You had asked before bodies of water that are available. So these are all public bodies of water. Yes. And we went out there and we were fishing, and I did horrible the entire tournament. And it got down to the last 30 minutes, and you do your fish submissions virtually. You have to take a photograph with your phone, and as I mentioned before, you have to have the orientation of the bass precise and exact. And I hadn't caught anything. I missed a couple. Corey Dreyer was in the lead for his team. Their team was up, if I remember correctly, I think their team was up by something like 17 inches. Now, that may seem a lot, and it is a lot, but if we still have to be able to submit a fish, right, because remember, it's an aggregate total of top 10 fish per team, then that could be just one fish. That could be a good bass, right? So Yeah, Corey's team. I was out there, and we were counting down to the last 30 minutes before we had to stop, before lines out. So I completely relocated. It was a very, very windy day, and my rig, my kayak is extremely large, and so it's like a big wind sail with me on top of it. You know, I'm 6'8", so I'm standing on top of this thing. I had to sit down and try to really go up, go into the wind, so to speak. And I think the wind was kicking, I don't know, like 16 to 20 knots at the very least, and upwards of 22 to 23 knots. So on a kayak with a lithium battery, I knew my time was counting down, but I just pushed for it. So I went way, way far away from the ramp. It got down. I changed my fishing style. Boom. Right in the road. 2 fish. I landed the fishing style. I knew the area. I landed 2 fish. It put us in the lead.
Woo!
And I was kind of talking smack.
Yeah.
And we ended up winning the tournament. But the problem is that right when the clock expired, I had documented my 2 fish. My battery gave out. And there I was. I had no battery. I had a paddle, but that paddle didn't matter because my rig is very, very large, and with that much wind, it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah.
And thank God it was summer temperatures. I was able to basically bring my yak up onto someone's property, and I just waited, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I was trying to call. I had no reception. I couldn't get a hold of anyone. And here comes Corey Dreyer. He comes right by me, and he sees me, and I waved him over, obviously, and he came over, and he's like, you need a lift? And Corey's he's a veteran too. God bless the man. So obviously I was like, I do. I need a lift. And so he hooked me up, changed his battery pack out, hooked up a tow line, and towed me all the way back to the ramp. And I was humbled very quickly with that.
Well,
so
we have the last little clip of that.
We have a video.
And Jim, if you
Yes,
if you want to talk over it, just unmute yourself when the video starts.
Okay.
Is this the victory tow?
Now, Jim, the audience got the audio from that. You and I, we don't, because I think it would mess things up. But there was a conversation that was going on there.
I didn't even see the video, but yeah.
Oh, you didn't see it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Huh.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but I think it's because I'm on my phone. But yeah, so Corey was in the lead kayak, and he was pulling me, and then my co-owner, Will, was on shore taking the video, and I think he had made a comment about how they're pulling us in, us in for the win or something like that. But yeah, it was very, very comical, very comical.
Wow.
That's an exciting story.
There's a couple others, but that was.
So you won, and the second place guy towed you in.
So our team won, and it just so happened, and I caught the winning fish. But there's a discrepancy here too, or not a discrepancy, but there's more to the story. His team would have won had they not lost a fish that they were trying to measure. And they didn't. I think they didn't have their. I don't think they had an identifier, and so they tried to go back to get an identifier. So had they had their identifier, they would have won. But it just so happened the way things worked out. Hey, that's competition. You can't account for all variables. That's what happened that day.
I think they should get points for towing the winner home.
No, they shouldn't. we keep the win on that one, huh?
Well,
it's a good story, though.
It was a fun day.
It's a great story,
Yeah.
But we are out of time.
No, there's so much more to talk about. I wanted to talk about snakehead. I want to talk about that giant carp you had in one photo. There's so much more to talk about.
We'll have to have him back.
If I could have, I know, right? If I could have a 30-second window to talk about snakehead, because I think it's important.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
May I?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So snakehead are not decimating our waterways. They are not some monster that's out there eating small kids in the middle of the night. It's not like that. They are. It's such a hyperbole for anyone when they talk about snakehead and they think that it's ruining everything. They actually are really contributing. Yeah, I appreciate you, John. I love you, John. They actually contribute to the environment that we have and the equilibrium that we're sustaining when it comes for bass living amongst the snakehead. The problem that we're having, though, is that snakehead are being prolifically hunted. There's bow anglers out there. There are anglers that do fish for them for the sport because they are an incredible sport fish. They really are. They fight most of the time they fight more than a largemouth bass will. And they have an explosive power, a mouthful of teeth. But I'm going to tell you right now, they are one of the best tasting fish I've ever had. And one of the things that John Odenkirk and his team are really good about doing is the research and the data that they have over the last 20 years, what they know and what they can bring to the table as far as a knowledge base. So I encourage anyone who wants to see snakehead as being officially listed as a sport fish, vote during the biannual town hall that they have, or there's a recommendation that you can make for DWR in 2-year intervals. And I think it's going to be, if it's not this year, it's going to be definitely next year. And you can do that. You can make that recommendation. And if we have enough voice in the population to make this happen, we can start to protect them. The problem is that their their numbers, they kind of peak about 10 years. And then they start to go down before they start to spread to a new location. You see an abundance in numbers of snakehead, but they are not the boogie fish, if you will, or the frankenfish, if you will. They're an incredible natural resource.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that you always bring education and safety into everything you're talking about and all of your videos. So thank you so much for that. Really important what you said.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Throughout the show, there are numerous times where we normally have to ask follow-up questions because the guest is not quite as much of a natural teacher as you are.
Yeah.
But you were really great the entire time through of actually using a term and then following it up with educating the audience. But let's do a little drum roll.
Question of the evening.
And my drum roll is not very good tonight. Let's see if we can get a winner for the question of the evening.
I can't do that.
What is going to be John DeLacy? I had to flip a coin because my brother put me on the spot. Matt, I can't show favoritism to you, but John, you definitely had great questions because you asked about what's a good starter yak. You asked about if we wanted to get into tournament fishing. That is what we're all about. We want to make sure that we try to push this with a good agenda to be able to encourage new English into the sport. So, John, by all means, I got you, brother, and I know where I can find you.
We'll pick that one. John as a tournament, Jim as a tournament angler. What is your advice for an angler that hasn't done one but thinking of taking the plunge?
That's
Great
a good
question.
Yeah.
And for John also,
very good question.
Said,
excellent question.
Late in the show, bring Jim on for another episode. There may be
oh my God, I would love that.
Maybe something
awesome.
in the works.
Yeah.
So everyone stay tuned for that.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate all the questions, the encouraging comments. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, you certainly are a wealth of knowledge, Jim. We really appreciate that. When's the next Washington Warhawk season start?
It's going to kick off here in April. So I was just looking at it, and we've got the roster pretty much. The lakes, everything's solidified. So I have my first tournament is going to be in May, but the Warhawks start their season in April. So I can't wait.
So
it's going to be phenomenal.
Where do people buy their season tickets?
You can go to our Instagram and go to our YouTube and start hitting click and the subscribe button. Make sure you get that notification bell. That way you can stay abreast of everything. Also, because we are not a nonprofit organization, we need to be able to travel. We need to be able to spread the word about conservation. So we are always open for sponsors. That means that when we have our jerseys, because we get nice jerseys, right? We make sure that we always give back, but we have our sponsors on there too. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Right on.
By all means. Reach out to us, subscribe, send us a message, let us know. And we have an expo, a youth outreach expo that we're planning for March 4th. That's still tentative, but it's where we can try to bring our youth into the game, first responders, veterans, and families as well, to make sure that we try to at least bring some type of an education and use it as a tool to help propel this agenda that we're talking about.
Oh my goodness. I might have to move back to Virginia. I want to join with all that's going on here. It's exciting.
Hey, it's the best kept secret. It is.
Yeah,
it is.
Right on. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jim, for allowing us to have you on the show. It's been an honor and a blessing. Do you have any last words, Crazyhorse?
No, it was a great time. I really enjoyed diving back into bass fishing. I'm now motivated to get out there and catch me a fat Sally.
Yeah, on an umbrella rig, right on.
I do. We can take, we can definitely take you out there. We can definitely take you out there for sure. And by the way, thank you for tonight. And just remember to everyone, remember 22 veterans a day is 22 too many. Thank you guys so much for everything.
For sure. Well, have a great night, everybody. And as always, fish on, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night.